Okay, so today we're going to talk about the axis symmetry, domain, range, and vertex. Axis of symmetry is simply the line that splits the parabola into two equal parts. Okay, we're always going to write it as x equals and then some number. We'll talk about how we write that in a little bit. Okay, domain is all of our x's, and in all the cases with quadratic functions that we're going to deal with, your domain will always be all real numbers. Okay, our range is all the y's. Okay, and it's either going to be y is less than or equal to some number, or y is greater than or equal to some number. Okay, and then the vertex is the top or bottom point on the graph. Okay, so it's either the top or bottommost point on our graph. Okay, so let's look at these. Here's our first one. Okay. We're going to start with our vertex. So the vertex is the top or bottommost point of our graph. So it's at that point, it's at the very, very bottom of that red graph. Okay, the order pair would be x, it would be 3, because you go 1, 2, 3 along the x-axis. -8 would be my y. Okay, the axis of symmetry, okay, is always going to be x equals, and it's always the number that's the x-coordinate of our x-axis. So in this case, it would be x equals 3, because our x-coordinate of our vertex is 3. Okay, our domain is always all real numbers. Okay, and our range, you always go y, you always go -8. Okay, -8 comes from the y-coordinate of the vertex. And then we look at this graph. And if you look, everything is above this point. Everything is up here. Okay? Well, to make above, it's always greater than, and you always put that equals to symbol underneath, so it's greater than or equal to. Okay, let's try the next one. Again, we're going to start with our vertex. This time it goes the other way, so it's going to be at the top of our graph, which is that point there. That coordinate is 2, 0, so that's our vertex. Our axis of symmetry is always going to be x equals, and the number is 2 in this case, so x equals 2. Okay, the domain is always all real numbers. Okay, and our range, again, we always write y. The number we're going to write here is 0 because that's the y-coordinate of my vertex. And then if I look at this graph right here, everything falls below that point. Okay, well, below means less than, and then you always will put that equal to symbol underneath it. Okay, the last one. Okay, first we're going to start our vertex. Our vertex is going to be at the top of our graph because it's going down. That point is at -1, 4. Okay, the axis of symmetry is always x equals, and then we look for the x-coordinate of the vertex, which in this case is -1, so x equals -1. The domain is always all real numbers. Okay, and the range, again, always put y. The y value of the vertex is 4, so it's 4. And then again, this graph, since it's going down, everything falls below that vertex, so it's going to be less than or equal to. And sometimes we're not given the axis symmetry line. Okay, sometimes we have to physically write it. To physically write it, we're going to use this equation. X equals -b over 2a. So we're always going to use that equation to find our axis of symmetry. Alright, so let's do some examples. Okay, the first one. It says find the axis of symmetry, so that's going to be x equals -b over 2a. Remember, it goes A, B, C on our graph, on our Okay, so b would be negative 3. It's going to change to negative because of it being this negative right here. Over 2 times a is being 1. Do your multiplication, so it's negative 3 over 2. And if you can't divide it or reduce it, that would be your final answer, so x equals negative 3 over 2. Let's try the next one. Okay, again, it goes a, b, c, so it's x equals negative b over 2a. Okay, so b is 10, so in this equation it's going to become negative 10 over 2 times my a. My a is negative 3. So it's x equals negative 10 over negative 6. Since they're both negatives, it's going to turn into a positive because negative divided by negative is a positive, so it'll be positive 10 over 6. And then you can reduce it by dividing them by 2. So x equals 5 over 3. Okay, last one. Again, it's a, b, c. So x equals negative b over 2a. So x would equal, b is 4, so it's going to become negative 4 on this equation, over 2 times my a, which is 2. So x equals negative 4 over 4, so we can divide that to get x equals negative 1. Okay, to find my vertex, simple enough. We use the axis symmetry equation that we just found. And then we use the number that we get to substitute that value into the original equation, and then we're going to get our vertex. Okay, so again, we're going to start with our x equals negative b over 2a. Remember, it goes a, b, c. In this case, b is negative 10. So because it's negative 10, and I have that negative, it's going to become positive 10 in the equation. Over 2 times my a, which is 5. 2 times 5 is 10. So 10 over 10 is 1. So there is my axis of symmetry, my vertex. So now we're going to use our original equation, because we need the y value of that vertex point. And anytime I see an x, I'm going to replace it with this x from here, which is 1. So it's going to go there and there. So it's 1 squared. Okay? Then from here, you always do the exponent first. So 1 squared is 1. Then you do all your multiplication. So 5 times 1 is 5. Negative 10 times 1 is negative 10. Okay? Then you do 5 minus 10 here, which is negative 5. And then add it to y equals negative 2. Okay, so our vertex, we write it as an order pair, x comma y would be 1, negative 2. The axis of symmetry would be x equals, and then the x of our vertex, which is 1. The domain is always all real numbers. And the range is going to be a little bit different because we don't have the graph. Again, it's still going to be y, and it's still going to be the number negative 2. Remember on Friday we talked about the a value. If the a is positive, like in this case, so a is positive 5, okay, positive, means that this graph opens up and it looks something like this. Okay, well if I look at that point, everything is above that point, so that means that it's greater than or equal to. One more example. Okay, remember to find our vertex, we start with the axis symmetry equation, negative b over 2a. For a here, it's a, and b, this case has no c, or c is 0, which doesn't really mean much to us right now. Okay, b is negative 2, well negative of negative 2 would be positive 2. A is negative 1, so 2 times negative 1. So 2 over negative 2 means that x is negative 1. Now to get the y value of that vertex, every time we see an x, we're going to replace it with -1. Okay? Always do our exponent first. -1 squared is 1. Okay, then we're going to do our multiplication. -1 times 1 is -1. -2 times -1 is +2. So y will equal 1. So our vertex is at the point -1, 1. Our axis of symmetry is always x equals the x value of our vertex, which is -1 in this case. The domain is always all real numbers. And then the range, okay, remember the range is always y, the number, which in this case is 1. And we got to look at the a value, and in this case the a value is negative, which means that this graph opens down like this. If you notice, everything falls below. Below means less than, so it would be less than or equal to.